The wind howled across the snow-covered peaks of the Alps, slicing through the silence like a whisper from the mountain itself. High above the tree line, where the air thins and time seems to stand still, two brothers once set out on what they thought would be the adventure of a lifetime. They never came back. It's been 3 years since their disappearance. Search parties combed every visible trail. Helicopters scanned the valleys, and their photos were plastered across news outlets and trailhead bulletin boards. But there was nothing. No footprints, no gear, no signs of life. Then, one autumn morning, deep in a remote stretch of alpine forest, a local hunter stumbled upon something. A flash of fabric buried beneath melting snow. A backpack, and something more chilling beside it. What he discovered would not only answer the haunting question of what happened to the two brothers, it would uncover a story of survival, desperation, and the quiet power of brotherhood in the face of nature's harshest elements. This is not just a story about a tragic climb. It's a story about what the mountains remember and what they finally gave back. Their names were Lucas and Emil Hartmann. Lucas, the older brother at 29, was calm, methodical, and fiercely protective. Emil, 26, was more impulsive, full of laughter and energy, the kind of man who talked to strangers on hiking trails and always carried a small notebook to jot down thoughts mid-journey. Together, they made the perfect team. Raised in a small Swiss village not far from Interlaken, the brothers had grown up with the mountains in their blood. Their father had been a guide, their mother a teacher. Every winter they skied the same frozen slopes their grandfather once crossed during the war. Every summer they climbed, pushing further, higher, more remote. They weren't professionals, but they weren't amateurs either. By 2021, they had already completed 10 major alpine routes across Switzerland, Italy, and Austria. Their bond was more than family. It was forged in ice, in rope knots, in shared silences watching the sun rise over ridgelines. When they announced they were planning a winter ascent of the Breithorn, a notoriously tricky peak on the Swiss-Italian border, no one was surprised. But this time, it felt different. The weather had been unpredictable that season. Heavy snowfalls early in the year, followed by sudden thaws. Their mother, who always waited with warm soup and worry, asked them to postpone. Emil laughed it off, saying, "Don't worry, Mama. Lucas is with me. He knows the mountain better than anyone." The 9th of January was the day they set out. Their last known message was a short video Emil sent to a friend that morning, just the two of them smiling at the trailhead, snowflakes drifting gently around them, Lucas adjusting his pack, and Emil saying, "Off we go. See you on the other side." That was the last anyone heard from them. At first, no one panicked. The Hartmann brothers often disappeared for a few days off-grid. But by the 4th day, with no word, no signal, and worsening weather, worry began to settle in like frost creeping across a window. And within a week, worry turned into something much darker. The morning of the 9th of January was unusually calm. The sun had broken through thick alpine clouds, casting a golden hue over the snow-covered trails. Lucas and Emil set off just after sunrise, passing a quiet ranger station and waving to a pair of skiers they met near the base. They carried standard winter mountaineering gear, crampons, ice axes, GPS, avalanche transceivers, and enough provisions for 4 days. Lucas had checked the weather forecast obsessively the night before. It had shown a small window of clear skies, just enough, he believed, to summit and return safely. Their goal was to ascend via the western approach, a lesser-known route Lucas had scouted during the summer. It was steeper, but also quieter, less traveled. That suited them. They liked solitude. They liked the idea of standing alone on a frozen summit with only the wind as witness. The first day went as planned. By late afternoon, they had reached a designated bivouac site nestled into a sheltered rock face. They pitched a compact two-person tent, melted snow for water, and shared a freeze-dried meal. Emil scribbled in his notebook, while Lucas adjusted their gear for the morning push. In the audio recording recovered later from Lucas's phone, Emil can be heard laughing and saying, "Tomorrow, we touch the clouds." But sometime during the night, the weather shifted. Unpredictable gusts swept across the ridgelines. Snow began to fall light at first, then heavier. By morning, visibility had dropped to near zero. GPS readings became erratic, and the trail markers vanished beneath fresh powder. Still, the brothers pushed on. Lucas, always cautious, suggested turning back. But Emil believed it was just temporary, just a passing cloud. After all, they had each other. They'd been through worse. Midday logs from Lucas's GPS, watch one of the few devices to partially survive, suggest they had reached 3,800 meters just below the summit ridge, and then nothing. The data ends abruptly. No return path, no descent recorded. Speculation would later swirl about what happened next, perhaps an avalanche, perhaps a slip on an ice shelf. Or maybe, most chillingly, they simply got lost blinded by whiteout, walking in circles, unable to orient themselves in the vast empty snowfield. When they failed to return by the 13th of January, their father called the local rescue station. Within 24 hours, a search and rescue team was in the air, scouring the mountain with drones, dogs, and experienced climbers. They found nothing. Not a single footprint, no discarded gear, no broken branches or signal flares. It was as if the mountain had swallowed them whole. For months, the family refused to believe the worst. Hikers disappear and return. Rescue teams miss things. Maybe they had found shelter. Maybe they were waiting out the storm. But days turned to weeks, and hope, once vibrant and stubborn, began to fade like a distant echo in the snow. The official search began on the 14th of January, just one day after the brothers' expected return. It was cold, -15 degrees, and snow was still falling in thick, silent sheets. But the Hartman family wasn't willing to wait. Within hours, a helicopter from the local mountain rescue unit lifted off from Zermatt, carrying trained alpine rescuers, a thermal camera, and 2 avalanche dogs. Their mission: to find any trace of Lucas and Emil. The first sweep focused on the western route, the path Lucas had marked in his climbing notes. The searchers scoured ridgelines, crevices, and potential avalanche zones. A single footprint in the snow sparked a moment of hope, but it led nowhere. No fresh signs, no discarded gear, no emergency beacon. Day after day, teams rotated in and out, battling low visibility, fresh snowfall, and increasingly treacherous terrain. A drone spotted what looked like a flash of red on a slope, but when rescuers reached the spot, it was nothing more than a patch of exposed rock. Searchers rappelled down cliffs, dug through avalanche debris, and scanned the mountainside with infrared, yet the Alps remained silent. Meanwhile, their parents set up camp at the base of the mountain, refusing to leave. Friends brought food. Locals came to light candles. News crews arrived, and for a brief moment, the disappearance of the Hartman brothers became a national story. People across Europe watched and waited and prayed. On the 6th day, an ice axe was found partially buried in snow near a frozen overhang. The initials LH were faintly etched into the handle. It was Lucas's. That single object reawakened the search. But no other gear was located. No sign of Emil. Then, a glove, just one frozen, stiff, fingers curled, as if grasping at something that was no longer there, found 2 kilometers from the axe, half buried near a steep ravine. Was it Emil's? No one could confirm. After 3 weeks, the official search was suspended. The mountain, they said, had given all it was willing to give. Statistically, after that amount of time in those conditions, survival was considered impossible. But the Hartmans didn't stop. They hired private guides, some from as far as Chamonix and Tyrol. In the spring, when the snow melted, they returned again, hoping the thaw might reveal something. They posted signs in villages, offered rewards for information, and spoke to other climbers who had braved similar routes. Each lead ended in silence. Each season passed without answers. And so the Alps kept their secret. Until 3 years later, when the ice began to melt more than usual, and a lone hunter stepped into a forgotten stretch of alpine wilderness that no one had searched before. It was late October. Nearly 3 years to the day since the Hartman brothers had vanished. The first snow had not yet fallen, and the autumn air in the Alps was strangely warm. Warmer than it should have been. Glaciers that normally stayed frozen well into winter had begun to shrink, exposing rock faces and crevices that had been hidden under thick ice for decades. Thomas Keller, a 6-1-year-old hunter from the nearby village of Randa, had been walking the same forested trails for most of his life. He wasn't searching for deer that day, he was simply following a hunch. The unusual melt had opened up a slope he hadn't explored in years, one just beneath a craggy glacier shelf known as the Totenhang, or the Death Slope, a name whispered among locals with uneasy respect. He moved carefully, his boots crunching over loose scree and damp earth. The silence was complete, broken only by the occasional chirp of a mountain bird or the distant rumble of shifting ice. And then he saw it something out of place in this timeless wilderness. A strip of faded nylon, half buried in a patch of dirty snow. He crouched down, brushing away debris with trembling hands. It was the strap of a backpack, dark blue, with worn seams and a broken buckle. His breath caught in his throat. He looked around and suddenly, the surroundings felt colder. 10 meters away, under the edge of a slowly receding ice sheet, he spotted what at first looked like a bundle of old clothing. But as he stepped closer, the outline became horrifyingly clear. A human figure curled slightly, as if asleep preserved in ice. The skin was pale gray, the face frozen in a half expression of exhaustion or peace. The jacket still zipped, one glove missing. Snowmelt had begun to pool around the edges of the body, slowly releasing it from its icy tomb. Thomas stumbled back. He didn't need to see more to know what he had found. He took a photo on his phone, marked the GPS, and made his way shaken and silent back down the slope. Authorities arrived by helicopter the next morning. The recovery was delicate. Ice axes and thermal tools were used to carefully remove the body from the ice. Not far from the first, they found bones scattered, but clearly human. A second individual, less preserved, likely dislodged by melting or animal activity. Both were taken to a forensic lab and burned. The identification process was slow but certain. The backpack contained a wallet with a student ID still legible. Emil Hartman. DNA samples from the bones matched those of Luca's. It was them. After 3 years, the mountains had finally answered. Their gear, what remained, was catalogued and analyzed. The tent was torn and frozen in place. A broken headlamp, a bent trekking pole. But one item stood out, a weathered notebook, protected in a plastic bag inside Emil's jacket. The ink was faded, but still readable. It contained dated entries, brief, increasingly desperate messages. It was a journal of survival, and it told a story far more haunting than anyone had imagined. The notebook was small, palm-sized, with a black cover softened by years of wear and cold. Inside, Emil's handwriting was uneven at times, neat, other times shaky and nearly illegible. Some entries were dated, others simply marked by time. Morning, night. I don't know what day this is anymore. The first entry came 2 days after they had reached their high camp. The 11th of January. Whiteout since yesterday. We tried to wait it out, but the wind is brutal. Lucas thinks we should backtrack tomorrow if visibility improves. Food is still okay. Spirit's decent. He keeps the stove warm, makes jokes. It helps. But the weather didn't improve, and their situation grew worse by the hour. The 13th of January. Still no visibility. GPS isn't working. Lucas thinks the antenna froze. We tried to find the trail back, but ended up in a ravine. Nearly lost my footing. He caught me. Always does. The 14th of January. Night. We're lost. I know it now. We both do. Lucas doesn't say it, but I can see it in his face. The cold is getting into our bones. My right hand is numb. I dropped my glove. I don't know where. I'm scared to tell him. By then, the snow had returned. The storm had circled back, blinding them in a white maze. They tried to descend lower, hoping to reach the tree line or a cave shelter Lucas had read about once in a climber's journal. But the terrain was disorienting. Emil's notes became shorter. The 16th of January. Out of food. Half a chocolate bar each tomorrow. Melting snow for water. Lucas talks less now. Just looks at the horizon. I think he's trying to stay strong for me. I'm ashamed I can't be strong back. The 17th of January. Snow up to our waists in some places. We made a shelter with the tarp. Wind ripped half of it away. Lucas has a fever. He won't say it, but I can feel it in his skin. He shivers even when we're pressed together. I told him a story tonight about the lake we used to swim in as kids. He smiled. That meant everything. One of the final entries was just a few lines, uneven, almost like he was writing with frozen fingers. The 18th of January. Morning? I can't feel my feet. My legs are too heavy. Lucas isn't waking easily anymore. His breath is shallow. I don't want to sleep, but I have to. Maybe I'll dream of home, of warm soup, of Mom's voice. Then, the last page. No date, just one sentence. If you find this, please tell our mother we stayed together. When investigators read those words aloud to the Hartman family, Emil's mother wept without sound. His father gripped the arm of his chair until his knuckles turned white. They had imagined many endings, but not this one. Not a quiet, slow fade into the snow. Not two sons holding on to each other in the cold. Too proud to give up. Too human to be truly afraid. The journal became more than evidence. It became a memorial. A voice reaching across time, frozen but never forgotten. When the news broke, it spread through the village like a sudden gust of cold wind, quiet but unmistakable. Lucas and Emil had finally been found. After 3 winters of not knowing, of hoping and doubting in equal measure, the Hartman family finally had an answer. Their mother, Anna, hadn't left the village in months. Every year, on the anniversary of their disappearance, she lit 2 lanterns and placed them in the window, one for each son, glowing gently against the dark mountain sky. When the investigators returned her Emil's journal, wrapped in a clear protective sleeve, she didn't speak for a long time. She simply held it to her chest, closed her eyes, and whispered, they weren't alone. The village organized a memorial at the foot of the mountain. Locals, climbers, and even strangers who had followed the story online attended. Some brought candles. Others brought stones from their own hikes, placing them gently near a photo of the brothers smiling side by side. One alpine guide who had searched for Lucas and Emil during that first frantic week spoke softly at the service. "The mountain didn't take them without a fight. They loved it too much. They respected it. And in the end, it gave them back to us not broken, but together." For the first time in 3 years, the Hartman family didn't look up at the peaks with grief. They looked with memory, with peace, and with the knowledge that even in the harshest places on earth, love leaves a trace that time and snow cannot erase. Even after the bodies were recovered, even after the journal had been read and reread by experts and family alike, some questions still hung in the cold mountain air unanswered and perhaps unanswerable. Why had the GPS failed so completely? Was it damaged by the cold? Or was the storm so severe that even satellite connections had faltered? Could they have been rescued if the weather window had lasted just one more day? And then there was the matter of the route itself. Lucas had planned their ascent meticulously, but their final location where Emil was found frozen was far off the expected path. Some speculated they had become disoriented and unknowingly crossed into a dangerous glacial shelf, a place with no known exit. Others wondered if an avalanche had forced them to reroute, or if they were simply trying to survive hour by hour, no longer thinking in terms of navigation but instinct. Most haunting of all, were there signals, flares, or signs that had been missed during those early search days? Did they wait, watching skies they hoped would bring help? A few older climbers in the village, speaking over quiet coffee, shared a chilling reminder. The area where they were found had long been avoided, considered cursed, or at least bad luck. In old alpine lore, that ridge was called Der Schlafhang, the sleeping slope. Whatever happened up there remains part mystery, part tragedy. But one thing is certain. Lucas and Emil faced the unknown not as victims but as brothers, together to the very end. The Alps have seen thousands of climbers come and go, some triumphant, some never returning. But every so often, a story rises from the ice that stays with us. Not because of how it ended, but because of how deeply human it was. Lucas and Emil Hartman didn't conquer the mountain. They didn't plant a flag or take a photo from the summit. But they did something far more lasting. They showed us what it means to hold on to each other, even as everything else slips away. Their story isn't just about a tragic climb. It's about love between brothers, about the quiet strength of family, about the courage it takes to face death with dignity, and the grace of remembering someone not for how they died, but for how they lived. Somewhere in that cold, white silence, 2 young men faced their final hours not with fear, but side by side, heart to heart. And when the mountain finally gave them back, it also gave back a message, a reminder that even in the loneliest places, love does not vanish. It endures. It waits. And sometimes it is found again written in fading ink beneath the snow. If this story moved you even just a little, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. We share real stories like this every week, stories of mystery, loss, survival, and the quiet strength of the human spirit. What do you think really happened up there on the mountain? Do you believe the Alps still hold secrets yet to be uncovered? Leave us a comment below. We read every one. And if you know someone who would be touched by this story, share it with them. Because some stories deserve to be remembered.